back with the F12, and as you can see, we have the radiators, one of the key ingredients to the water-cooled setup, and we got our motor sitting over there. Went through last time and I got this water line, and we got that mounted up in there. The top one, I can't find it. Well, I found it, and it's just way too big of a pain to get it overseas, over here. I'm just gonna make it. This one I was just gonna make as well, but this one's a more important mounting tab since it has all the weight sitting down on it, and it has this little piece. This one, it kind of mounts to here. But I figured I would utilize a bracket like so, and we'll mount that to the holes where it goes here. Keep the water line from getting in the way of anything, and it holds it back. We're gonna have to cut this and run a T going up to our reservoir, cut this and run a T going down to our motor. And we got our motor, everything sealed up. I also just popped the crank seals in on both sides, and we got our new brake pads on there. I took out the whole actual mechanism, and I cleaned that all and put some fresh grease. Greased that all up so our brakes should be feeling minty. Once we get the intake on there, we can air leak down test it. Then we'll be able to throw the motor in and have this thing rolling. I also want to come in here and take the cluster off because I want to make sure I can fit a temp gauge that I've been looking at for a digital temp gauge to mount in here. Alright, so I've been wanting to put a new gauge in here basically to replace the time gauge. This is kind of useless anyways. It tells me oil light, which we delete the oil pump if my brights are on, and then basically the time and blinkers. But we're going water cooled, so we needed a water gauge for the temp gauge, and I feel like this might fit. We measured it last night, hoping it fits. Yeah, it's way smaller, Chief. That is so, that is so much smaller. Wow. How are our measurements so off? So what I'm thinking is, I have drill bits this size. What if I took a piece of ABS? I think I have ABS. Pull saw it. I'm going to have to trim the ABS. After finding out that the gauge itself didn't fit in the cluster, I wanted to see how the temp gauge was fitting. So we went and pulled the temp gauge out, which is actually for a car, so it usually goes into like a thermostat area, and it was way too long. The needle on the temp gauge was sticking right into the block, so I knew we had to do some work on that one as well. If I drill a hole in this will fall through that, then Dremel the outside. For that.
Perfect.
That's just kind of a lot. But until we could figure out more on the temp gauge and go to the store and get some fittings for that, it was time to mount the gauge itself in the cluster. So we took some ABS. Like I said, we grabbed this hole saw, and we were able to hole saw through the ABS. I know this hole saw is the correct size for the gauge because it's what I used on my car when I did the dashboard on my car with the same gauges. So trim that up, filed down the rough edges, and got this piece rounded enough to trim it all out.
There it is. Ooh.
Look at that now. So it's like pushing it out. I think we're on the right track is what I'm trying to say here. Hold on. Oh yeah. Came out clean.
Perfect.
That's dialed. Also, I didn't film it, but we finished Juan's Banshee, got everything sealed up. He got the correct domes, so we were able to put the head on. It cleared, it rotates now, and we sealed it all up, air leak tested it. It's ready to blow up.
First try. About to go in tomorrow. Soon.
Alright boys, so the little bit we got done with the radiator, it is time to finish up the motor. And as you know, we were waiting on some parts to finish up the intake here. And we just got those parts. So there's some parts in here. I think you see what that is already. But we're going straight to do the intake, boys. To do the intake. We got a couple other bits in there, but we'll get to those later. It is time to seal this motor up so we can air leak down test it. It's time to air leak test our motor that we built for the F12. Make sure everything is sealed up. If you don't do this, you're probably missing out on huge problems on your bike. I get a lot of DMs with a lot of tuning issues on their bike, and I'd say 75% of them are due to an air leak issue. So hook the bike pump to it, put in 6 PSI, and it doesn't look like we're moving one bit, boys. Over 20 minutes, it's holding all air. We're good to go, boys. Alright, it is time to put the motor back in. We got the solo bike hang situation from the rafters going on here. Just enough so I can slide the motor in, bolt the shock bolt up, set it on the wheel, and then I can take it off, put it on the kickstand. So, makes it easier when you're putting a motor in by yourself. I've been hanging my bike like this on the rafters since the OG 150 swap days on the Tao scooters. This is like clutch if you're working in the garage by yourself and you need the weight off the chassis so you can move things around underneath. Alright boys, we have a few more parts for the F12 right here that we need to crack open because it's just that time. We're right there, boys. So here we got a stage 6 pipe. So I went back and forth a lot on deciding on what pipe I was going to go with. I was originally going to do a Yasuni C21, and then I was going to look at the stage 6 R1400. Basically, what I made my decision on was the stage 6 R1200. Look at this beautiful, beautiful pipe. It's got the pie cuts up here. And I put it up next to my Yasuni C16 the other day, and it's about 2 to 3 inches shorter, which I like because the other one's just so long it looks weird on the bike. The chamber's bigger, but bigger chamber. It has a longer bottleneck situation going on up here. Got a little carbon fiber silencer for it. This pipe looks clean though. I like the Yasuni R's like kind of overlap a little bit, really close right here. I like how the stage 6 one has the gap here. R1200 because I really want to look for a better bottom end to mid range. I'm not so much focused on the top end. I'm just not a top speed type of guy. Like I like fast bikes. I don't need to be fully pinned, you know, going 90 on a scooter. It's going to be quick. Regardless, it's going to be ridiculously quick. But the R1400 is a little bit more top end. You start lacking a little bit of that bottom end. I like the R1200 setup. Alright, now there's a whole lot going on in this box right here. We got our Malossi MHR Team 2 inner rotor ignition going on. So this is the same one I put on my GP1. Here we have our ignition coil, and then here we have, I guess you would just call it our CDI box. And then we have a spark plug wire, a spark plug boot, some wiring, and other bits that we need over here. Looks like a lot of grounds. We got our stage 6 water pump. There she is, which is basically just a Bosch water pump. Alright, so I set the exhaust on there just for a second because I wanted to figure out the water pump situation, but it looks like I'm going to have no issues because this pipe runs way back here. On my GP1, I don't know if you can really see it. Massive pipe, and it runs down like the side area. So that little black thing right there is my water pump, and it like comes in contact with it. So I wanted to make sure that we had clearance there, and we definitely, most definitely do. So I'm trying to figure out a route for my water pump right now. After getting the confirmation that we were clearing everything on the under panel and clearing the water pump on everything, it was time to get the ignition set in there. So we went ahead and bolted the timing plate up through the rotor on itself. Then I got to figuring out the spark coil mounting. So I realized that it wasn't going to fit without trimming away a little bit of this tab so it sat flush. Alright, setting up everything for the ignition now. So we got everything kind of laid in here. I just have it loose. Obviously I'm not setting timing or anything right now. So that's all kind of loose right now. And just trying to get an idea of running the wires. So there was nothing interfering with the seat back there, which we look way good on clearance for the seat. And then the only other thing I really needed to check was where to mount actual adjuster part for the ignition. So I was originally going to mount it in one of these holes that was up here and have it sit here sideways, and I'm able to kind of access it to adjust these from the side here, but you won't be able to go from underneath because I'll have the under panel on. So I figured it'd be best if I drilled another hole back here in the corner and kind of angled this, because then I can pop this cover off here and get a small screwdriver and be able to adjust it like that. The most annoying things are working on a bike when it's really cluttered and messy, so I worked hard on trying to make sure that this stuff fit in the stock locations or wasn't too bulky where it was going to interfere with any plastics or be hard to reach. So really figured out how I was going to run all the wiring. Like I said, got that spark coil mounted perfectly and got that thing out of the way. Then it was time to work on some of the coolant lines, really bouncing back and forth between areas of this bike, but trying to complete it all at once. So we got that coolant line figured out, made sure that was going to work, but we still had some pieces to wait on for the coolant setup, so I got back to figuring out this cluster, got that thrown on so I can finish up the rest of the wiring on this bike. I continued to run the wires for the gauge and the sensor all the way through the bike and figuring out my tack, drilling a hole in the headset and mounting that up as well. Alright, test fitting everything right now. I think it's all going to clear. Let me show you guys what we're working with. Alright, so starting from the top, we got everything in the headset. So we have our coolant temp here with the digital gauge. We have our tack mounted right here. Drilled the hole, ran the wire through there so there's no gaps in the headset or anything like that. And then coming out of there, we have our tack and our water temp sensor gauge going down, and we have to plug that in to the temp sensor that's going to be right there. I just have to get an adapter fitting, and then that's where the sensor is going to go for that. So everything mounted for the coil with that little cutout that we did. All the wiring in there with all the grounds needed, everything wired for the actual ignition, and then I put a little plug in the top here. Look how clean this looks. Not the OEM one, but I found a little plug that I had that fit, ran the wire from that, and I put the under panel on to make sure I didn't have an issue with the water pump, and I didn't. So we got our water pump hooked up in there. The bottom feed tube that tees off, goes into the radiators, and then I have the one ran from the top of the head up to here, which is going to connect up here. I need a T-fitting right there, and then another T-fitting on the side that will go up to the reservoir, and that'll be up there. Everything mounts up and fits with the plastics on, and then this is on a swivel bracket now. I had put a nutsert in there so I can like turn it, and it sticks out right out that little compartment right there on the panel. That's why I lined that up, and I found that spot. So then I can come in here, mess with that, swivel it back. It's clean. Man, this thing turned out super, super clean. This is gonna look sick. So that's what I'm currently doing, is wiring that in right now. But it's gonna look sick. Currently wiring everything in right now. So when you go with these inner rotor ignition setups, they don't usually have a charging system. I think MVT makes one with a charging system. And to power everything I need is just the lights and the water pump now. So what I came up with is I found the plug that came from the stator. This plugged into this OEM stator, which this was the 12 volt output that lit up everything. So right now I have a battery plugged in. Switch 12 doesn't light up the cluster, and it only lights up the brake light on this. I don't have a running light, but it only lights up the brake light. The headlights don't come on by this. The headlights come on when the bike's running, and the headlights and the dashboard, all that runs off the charging system. Is what powers the harness from the charging system, because this pink wire is what was in every bulb and like these random parts throughout the scooter, and I believe this is the same wire that is running through the charging system. Actually, I know because yesterday I hooked up a battery to this and it powered on the cluster and everything. So what I've come up with is I have made this little wiring situation myself with a plug that matches the OEM plug. So now I can plug this in. It's going to go to the pink wire. It's going to splice off of there. From there, it's going to go up to my key ignition. I'm going to find what is switch 12 on the key ignition. So when I turn the key, gets power from the battery to this is what I want to power and my lights and everything like that. So when I turn the key, my cluster, everything lights up. Might sound confusing, wiring's kind of a mess, but from there I'm debating right now if I want to run my water pump direct turn on by the key, or do I want to run a separate switch my water pump. I've been working on the temp sensor, and here is a really rigged up piece that I had to make. Basically the problem is that the thread pitch on here isn't NPT, it's BSP, which is like British standard pipeline, and we use NPT over here in America. So basically I have this on here now, but you can't really see it. The temp sensor had a long prong that went through. It's for a car, because this is a glow shift gauge, which usually runs in a car. I had options to either order a stage 6.1 and then rewire it to this gauge, or try to make something work, and I'm gonna try this first. It looks like shit, but I think it's gonna work. I ran this little adapter, which converts this to NPT to BSP. I had to trim it down because it was too long and it wasn't letting this slip up all the way to the tip. So now my water temp sensor is kind of in here, but I think it'll still work. But it's completely bottomed out and it's tight in there. So I don't think this will leak. I don't think this is gonna matter. Worst comes worst, we'll have to redo it. It's not a big deal. So side note, we got our, I already kind of opened it, but we got our Makita drill battery, which we're gonna be using for our lighting system on this bike. So the plan is basically, I've ordered an adapter that this slides into, and then that goes to standard wires, and we're gonna be able just to leave this in the glove box as standard where the battery would typically go. But this is an 18 volt, it's a $110 battery, I think it was. Pretty ridiculous, but super easy because I can just leave it on my charger. I also have 3 of them for my drills, so I can always kind of bring extras with me if I need them, you know what I mean? So that'll work, and I'll also probably do the same thing on the Pook for the lighting system when I go inner rotor on the Pook. That way I can just keep constantly cycling these batteries. I need them anyways for all my Makita power tools, so it works anyways. So with that being said, I'm working on converting all the lights to LEDs to save batteries. So LEDs in the little gauge clusters, LEDs in the headlights, LEDs in the brake lights. That's pretty much all the lights I have. So that should be only things really using power. Doing a continuity test, and this wire that went to the old ignition, this black and white wire, goes up here, and I checked on the throttle, there's a black and white wire, and that wire goes up to our kill switch in here. So this is the kill switch, and also the ignition has a kill switch as well. If you're wondering, it's spliced in as well up here, and that's what you need per Malossi on their wiring diagram for this ignition. So this yellow wire is supposed to be a ground hooked up to a switch, so it's supposed to be switch ground. Basically when it's unplugged, the bike will run. When it's grounded, it's a kill switch, just like how the ignition one is set up. So therefore this right now is hooked up to the ground on the battery, testing continuity. So when that's hooked up, continuity straight from this ignition wire to the ground. When the ignition's off, it has continuity, so therefore it's grounded when the ignition's off. it breaks the ground once you turn on the key. And that's the kill switch. I guess this needs to be ungrounded in order for the bike to run. Same with this one. For it to run and get spark, it's supposed to be unplugged, and then when it's plugged in, it kills the engine. So I'm gonna test that, check spark. I have to put on all my CVT stuff so I can use the kickstart. Make sure that it's getting spark when it's unplugged. Now the only thing I need to really figure out is the wiring for the lights and everything, because it's kind of being a pain. So wiring is kind of boring. I'm not gonna sit here and confuse you guys with it. All right, boys, check it out. Little splice action. Boom, tee off. Boom, to the top of the radiator. Tee off down here. Boom, to the water pump. Boom, tee off next one up here. Boom, water line up. Boom, reservoir. Boom, coolant setup done. All right, boys, F12 is wired up now. I was originally going to wire the water pump to a separate switch, and then I realized, you know, the mechanical water pump that's OEM on water-cooled Minarellis is driven by the crank. So no matter when you start the bike, even on a cold start, the water pump's already running. So I wired it straight to the key, so it's pretty much factory anyways. The water pump will always be running when I run the bike. Now everything I have is still wired to the ignition, even though we're not using the actual charging harness at all. We were able to use the stock harness, and I wired to the charging wire that comes out of the stator that powers the whole harness. I wired switch 12 from the ignition. I still have to clean it up, obviously. I'm gonna tuck it in here. Switch 12 from the ignition to that charging wire, which tees off to the water pump. The water pump is grounded with a couple other grounds that go to the engine, and then I have all the ignition grounds up here. So when I turn this key, all the lights come on, also the water pump comes on, but I'm not gonna run it for long because I don't have water in there. It sounds terrible right now. But if you look, turn key, water pump's on, sounds terrible. All the lights are on. And now, if I really need to, I can just come in here. I put a quick disconnect on my water pump. So what came in the mail today was our 18 volt to 12 volt adapter. So this is the 18 volt to 12 volt converter. And then we have this, which we will mount somewhere, and we will be able to simply slide our Makita drill battery right into there, and we'll mount that probably in that glove box area. We'll have to see where the coolant reservoir and everything sits. All right, boys, check it out. We got our converter from 18 volt, which this is, to 12 volt. So it goes from here, remount the battery, lock that in right there. Now it's running through there, converting 12 volts. Then right here, we put a little plug in the seat. We drilled it out to run the wires to everything. We got the ground. This originally was going to the battery in the glove box. I ended up changing that because I think it was just too much to cram both the converter and the battery pack and the coolant reservoir in the glove box. I just didn't want to deal with that. So I ran the original wires going to the battery over here. Over here, I extended them. I ran them all the way through and then into the seat. And then obviously from, like I said, the charging harness, that one's spliced off and it's going up here, set into key ignition. So now, when everything's plugged in, turn the key. Boys, we don't have my headlights in yet. I bought LED headlights. Those aren't in yet. But I don't have the water pump plugged in because I don't have water in there, so I don't want it just sitting here running. But I have a quick disconnect here for the water pump, so if you just set that in there, you can tell it starts kicking already. If everything's right with that 18 volt to 12 volt connector, we should only be seeing out of here. Everything's correct. We got it grounded to where the water pump is grounded to. This would be the charge coming out of it. Looks like we're sitting just about 12 volts, baby. So looks like we're getting 12 volts to everything. So we even have a little fuse in here as well, but tuck that away. Then obviously for removing the seat, that's the reason I did this. So I have these two connectors here, which is the ground and power out of the 12 volt converter. Those just unclipped. So those will be unclipped. These ones are crimped, but these will stay in the seat when you take it out. So makes for it super easy. And then when I need to charge my battery, just pull that out. We got this thing timed pretty much to what Malossi suggested, which is 1.55 millimeters from top dead center. So I'm using my micrometer. I smacked my camera lens right on that. Use my micrometer in here, which I used on my Pook Max. If you watch timing on that video, found top dead center, marked that, and then gave it, you know, freed up the crank, screwed this in 1.55 millimeters, then rotated all the way. Checked everything. Like I said, we got the timing done. I just checked right now, and we're getting spark when I'm kicking it over. So next thing, I'm gonna go ahead and set up the exhaust. get everything finalized on the exhaust. After that, my carburetor should be here tomorrow, so it should just fire up. I'm gonna mess with this. Go off some suggestions that I got from a couple buddies. Most people said just to turn off the rev limiter and don't adjust any on the actual offset or the trim, because we already did on here. And then like a 1 or 2 on the map, but I'm gonna look more into that and we'll see. Boys, she looks so good. Got the pipe thrown on there, slapped a little sticker on there. Everything mounted up for the pipe situation. We got our little flywheel weight, I guess you'd call it, counterweight for the inner rotor. This is awesome, and we literally are just waiting on a carburetor at this point, and we can fire this thing up. Obviously, I don't want to run it for a long time because we don't have our coolant hooked up yet, but we can definitely get the first fire up. But man, does she look good. Got everything hooked up, man. Everything good to go. Everything looks brand new again. We have put a couple more $1,000 now into the F12 after this thing was already a fully built scooter. Really, like, the only things left I would like to do is new front suspension and probably a new rear shock. I put this one on here, but I still think it's a little too soft for the scooter because this thing is pretty heavy, so it bounces a lot, especially the front. The front are super soft, so if you know any aftermarket shocks that are good for the F12, let me know, especially that fit with this front axle style. So let me know, comment down below. I'm definitely looking for shocks, but I don't want to change anything on the body because I love the way this body looks. So we're gonna be cutting out some holes on the inner panel just to clear the radiator, to get some air out through the radiator, but that's probably it. I did find on eBay the panel I needed for the double seats. So this is a single seat one. I have a double seat up in storage up here, but the panel is actually different. I found one on eBay with my exact graphic kit, and it's coming all the way from the UK. It was actually super cheap, $100 for that panel shipped from across the world, which is crazy to me because those are so rare. I've not found anything for sale with these panels. So, and of course, we got our kicker case back on now too. Looks great. What I've really been waiting for, boys, this is big. This is big right here. 2 boxes I've been waiting for all day. It literally took the UPS man to the very last minute. And like for the rest of this project, like I said, shout out Scooter Attack, who's been helping out along with this build and helping me get a bunch of parts for the F12. So they hopped on board with the F12. We've been needing a carburetor. I went with a CP21 originally, and everybody and their mom said that carb was way too small. It's usually what I run on any Minarelli. I don't usually run big carbs on Minarellis, unlike I do on the AF16s, but taking your guys' advice, we went with the PWK Stage 6 carb 26. I've never tried a Stage 6 carb, but like I said, I'm going Stage 6 on this whole build, so I figured I'd give it a shot, but I wanted a 26 mil, so. And I've been wanting one of these for the longest time. So we have a bike stand that we'll have to unpack here, and I'll show you guys that. We got a main jet kit for our carb because I needed that size jets because I usually don't have anything for like the bigger PWK style carbs. I run usually small carbs. Stand things, some extra crank seals, and I got some starter block-off plates for a couple of my Minarelli bikes. So now this one's all the way from the UK, and I think I know what this is. I have a lot of parts coming right now for the plug in the F12 from all over the world, so it's hard to keep track. But by the size, I think I know what this one is, boys. Wow, I think it made it safe, boys. Wow, that's some serious packing. Oh goddamn, dude. She looks so good out here like this. Look at this thing, man. Looks so aggressive. Alright boys, sadly this is where we're going to have to end it on the F12 because this video has gone on too long, but we got so much done in this video. We got pretty much all our coolant set up. We got the ignition timed. Like I said, we did 1.55 millimeters before top dead center, so that's how we have that set up, and then we can adjust the trim on the actual offset of timing more from here, but that's pretty much the standard from what Malossi suggests on this ignition. Everything is ready to go. Like I said, everything is wired now. We're all good to go on everything. I can't do the coolant until we get that piece, and I'm hoping we get that soon, but it's still coming from overseas, so it might be a little bit. As you can see, the difference in this is that this panel has this rear tab already on it, whereas the single seat, it's actually connected to the seat itself, so it comes up. This one's actually on the plastic. Hopefully we can soon figure out how we can run the double seat just for comfortability. I think it looks a little better too, but we need the grab handle. So if you have those, let me know. But this thing is brand new. It's literally new stock OEM. That is crazy. It's so clean. So clean. So much done in this one. I hope you guys are stoked for the F12. And next time we're going to fire this up. I'm actually probably going to fire it up tonight, but you guys gotta wait for the next video. So make sure you guys leave a thumbs up, subscribe. We're almost to 100K. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're gonna be doing a giveaway at 100K. I think we're gonna be doing a whole built motor giveaway. So I think that's a good 100K subscriber giveaway. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. That's gonna do it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one.